Hindsight bias, our first essential vocabulary word in the course. Luckily, it's an easy one. Just remember that hindsight is always 20/20, meaning it's easy to see what one should have done after the event has happened. Scientists recognize their hindsight bias and try to look at things objectively. You'll read more about this in the section containing the scientific attitude. Students understand the hindsight bias, but sometimes it can be disguised as overconfidence on a test. Remember that when results have been revealed to someone and they find those results unsurprising, it will be hindsight bias every time. Psychologists need to think critically in order to complete accurate research. They must question, reason, make decisions, evaluate, and analyze. Critical thinkers don't just accept things for the way they are. They are constantly asking, why? Theory is an organized idea that stems from observations. It makes predictions about behaviors or events based on gathered data. AP Psych students often confuse with the next word, which is something they're familiar with, hypothesis. Hypothesis is a testable prediction that is often implied by a theory, meaning the theory comes first, then a hypothesis is something that can be tested in an experiment to see if it is true and if it'll help support evidence towards the previous mentioned theory. The key word is testable. This one is in my top 5 most difficult AP Psych concepts for students. This will be our first web breakdown, operational definitions. It's a statement of the procedures, operations used to define research variables. Well, what the heck does that mean? I don't know either. So let's look at an example, shall we? Take this hypothesis for an example. Students who are given snacks in class learn more. Will this hypothesis be easy to replicate? What do you think? The obvious answer is yes, but scientifically, the answer is no. Let's look at that definition again. The word I want you to focus on is variables. What are the variables in our hypothesis? In a hypothesis, there are typically 2 types of variables, the independent variable and the dependent variable. We will go over these specifically in day 2. Snacks is a variable, and learn more is our other variable. Operational definitions seek to define our variables. So I ask you this question. Can we make the variables more specific? Can we specify what snacks we are using? And can we specify how we will measure learning? Well, of course we can. Let's operationally define the variables. Let's take out snacks and replace with delicious Oreos. Next, let's take out learn more and replace with receive an A on their unit test. See how we've defined the variables? Basically, we've just specified what the variables actually are. So now we can make a new operationally defined hypothesis. Students who are given Oreos in class will receive an A on their unit test. Perfect, simple, and operationally defined. Why did we do that? Imagine someone in England wanted to replicate my experiment. If they used my original hypothesis, how would they know what snack to give? We probably have 2 separate definitions of what it means to learn more. So operationalizing the variables is a fancy way to say, be specific. Let's move on. Replication goes together with operational definitions. Replication cannot exist if our variables are not defined. What if I buy Pop-Tarts instead of Oreos? What if I measure learning by percentage of growth and not by an A on the test? We wouldn't be able to compare results with other psychologists conducting the same experiment. This is a type of descriptive research. The table 2.3 on page 36 has a great comparison of the types of research methods. A case study is simply one person being studied in depth in hopes of finding universal principles that can be applied to everyone. This is usually only used in extreme scenarios, such as a child who's been locked away in isolation for their entire life. And we want to study the effect the isolation on her effect that the isolation had on their language development. You've all been asked to take part in the survey. on the phone, at a store, after eating dinner at a restaurant. They are everywhere because they're cheap and they're an easy way to gather lots of information on large populations of people. The only problem is that people tend to lie. Speaking of population, all of the people who you are surveying are now considered your population. The person in your case study or naturalistic observation is your population. Whoever is in your experiment is your population. I think you get the idea. A good survey uses random sampling, not to be confused with random assignment. In an experiment, random sample means that you select your population and then you select the people you want to conduct your survey on, but you select them randomly out of a hat or assign the numbers and pick the numbers at random. This ensures that you aren't biased when picking people to take your survey. Psychologists hate biases. The last descriptive research method is the naturalistic observation. Think of Jane Goodall. If you don't know who that is, she was the lady who studied chimpanzees for a long period of time. She watched them in their natural habitat. She did not manipulate or control the environment. She only recorded what she saw. This is helpful for understanding how people or animals act when they aren't being controlled or without expectations. If I wanted to conduct a naturalistic observation on you, I wouldn't watch you in the classroom. I'd watch you in the hallways or at lunch and gather data. Creepy, right? It's basically spying. That's it for day one. Thank you. I'll see you next time for Unit 2, Day 2. Be sure to subscribe.